Hello, everyone, and welcome to Body Bags. I'll be your reviewer for today. I am Lonnie from Horror Heaven77. If you get a chance, please check out my channel. And if you like horror, you'll like my channel. So, anyway, we're done with that. Let's get on. So, this was tricky. I was kind of debating whether or not I should do this like one at a time or maybe try to just do it all as one thing. And I decided I'm going to go ahead and do this all as one movie because technically that's pretty much what it is. And if I'm sure you already know by the title already, we're going to be talking about It, chapters 1 and chapter 2. And yeah, just real quick story. I remember, I don't know if this, I don't know if this happened to too many other people, but I remember the original miniseries It. I remember when this first came out on TV, I was like real little. And, of course, I was already into horror and stuff like that. And I remember how fun it was that this came on the first night. And I remember the next day I was getting ready to go to school and I wanted to talk about it. But the thing was, I honestly didn't know if anybody else in my class or anybody had seen it or even knew anything about it or anything like that. So it's just kind of like, but I wanted to talk about it. I'm not even kidding. As soon as I walked into the schoolyard, all everybody talked about was, have you seen part one of It? Oh my God, that's so good. That is so great, so scary and stuff like that. And, can't wait to see the second part and all this other kind of stuff. So, and then watch the second part. And, over the years, people said, they really hated the second part. So I never did. I've always enjoyed this miniseries. And, anyway, so we're not talking about that one. We're going to be talking about the new one. I just wanted to tell that story. And then over the years too, I have read the book. So it took me a long time, but I did read the book. So anyway, so I know, but anyway, so we're going to talk about the movies. The movies, directed by Andy Muschietti. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but he's known for the movie Mama and things like that. Um, Overall, I find these movies okay. They're entertaining enough. They're they. I do have some problems with them though. the I do feel that yes, in many areas this really is an improvement over this, but at the same time, I kind of feel like the miniseries kind of did some things better and had some elements of the book that these movies did not have. And at the end of the day, I really think what would have benefited this story, especially a book as big as this and everything else, I think really what would have benefited it would maybe be like, to do like a 10-part series or something like that. I mean, they could do that now. Do it like a 10-part series, each episode being like an hour long or 12-part series or something like that. I think that's really what this needs because there's so much going on. There's so much story. And for everybody complaining about how much this miniseries left out from the book, these movies do the same thing. Now, the movies do have, they do add elements that the original miniseries did not have. But that always didn't work. That wasn't always the best thing for it. Like for example, in It Chapter 2, they have the scene of the statue of Paul Bunyan come to life, which that was in the book, but it's one of those kind of things. It's like when you see it, especially with the CGI, it doesn't really work too well. And that is one of the biggest gripes I have with this movie is the CGI. Kind of the three things that really bug me about this movie. The CGI effects kind of really, I mean, it really kind of takes you out in some areas. Like I said, the CGI effects, the comedy, they're, in my opinion, especially It Chapter 2, these movies just have a little too much comedy for my taste. And 3, the jump scares. If you're one of those kind of people, like you can't stand jump scares in a movie, then yeah, you're going to hate these. Because these movies, they got so many jump scares. Every time you turn around, there's something's always popping up and stuff. The story is pretty, it's pretty simple story. I mean, it's not really much different than, what happened in this story. In the town of Derry, Maine, you have these, children are disappearing. They're being killed. You're introduced to your main character, Bill Denbrough, who's, in the original one, the boy was played by Jonathan Brandis, and and the adult was played by Richard Thomas in this one. I'm sorry, I forget the young actor's name, but the adult is James McAvoy, who great, fantastic in Split and Glass. But anyway, so his little brother Georgie turns out, he gets killed by Pennywise the clown, and then over the course of a summer, these kids in Derry, they're coming together and they form this, club. They call themselves the Losers Club. Over time, they accumulate 7 of them, and at the same time, they're trying to deal with Pennywise, who's the hang on, I'll get to that. But they're dealing with Pennywise, but at the same time, they're dealing with school bullies like Henry Bowers and things like that. And so then they're dealing, and then the whole thing about Pennywise is actually this shape-shifting monster. Usually, it always manifests itself in the form of a clown, but really what it is this kind of entity, is this kind of alien monster kind of thing that really it takes the shape of what you're most afraid of, because it feeds on fear. And so when the kids they get wind of it, and they're seeing things, and they're being visited by Pennywise, who's trying to lure them in so he could kill them and eat them and things like that. And during the course of the summer, they have to band together, and they go and they overcome all of their problems. Like, for example, like Beverly, she's having an abusive father who's pretty much like on the verge of raping her, just about. And then you have like Ben, who's dealing with the fact that he's overweight. And then you have like Eddie, who he has to deal with the fact that he has an overbearing mother who's always she's like making him crazy, making him think he's sick. And in pretty much Eddie Kasprak ends up being like the biggest hypochondriac in the world, and and so on and so forth. You have Mike Hanlon, who has to deal with the fact that he's African American, and he has to put up with racism and prejudice and things like that. So they have to overcome all these things, but at the same time too, in the course of this summer, they have to defeat it before it can kill and take any more children. So then that's pretty much what makes up the first part. The first movie here is dealing with that story. And then you get into the second story, which is, 27 years later. Now the kids are now adults. And then Mike Hanlon, who, he stays in Derry, and then he realizes that it has come back, and that there, murders and disappearances and things like that are starting to happen again, very similar to what happened when they were kids. And so he, calls everybody back and tells them, we made a promise that we need to, come back and defeat it once and for all, things like that. So, and, yes, I mean, basically, if you've seen this, it's not really that much different from that. Let's see here. Performance-wise, I would say the kid actors do a very good job. The child actors in the first movie, they do a really good job. But then again, too, I got to be honest, I thought the child actors in the original miniseries, I thought they did a fine job, too. So I had no problems with the child actors in either the original or the remake. They all do a good job. They all emote very well. They play their parts. They do what they need to do. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, in both versions, the child actors really work. Now, when we get to the adult section of the story, it's like, okay, you have, like I said, you have James McAvoy playing, Bill Denbrough. You have Jessica Chastain playing Beverly Marsh. Bill Hader's playing Richie Tozier, and so on. And for the most part, they do a good job. I got to be honest with you, though. A couple of the actors, for me, just kind of didn't really work. The actor who played Ben, I'm sorry. I mean, it's not that he did a bad job, but he's just kind of unremarkable. Just not a lot to him. I got to be honest. I really prefer John Ritter's performance. I don't know. Just to me, he had more of a presence to him. He made Ben a little bit more interesting or something. I don't know. But let's see here. The actor who played Eddie, he was okay, but I think like in the original movie, I think Dennis Christopher kind of he played the whole hypochondriac thing, but he didn't get to the point where he was actually irritating. Whereas the actor in this movie, I'm sorry, but he is. He's kind of irritating. To me personally, he was. And it's just kind of funny that the character of Eddie Kaspbrak would turn out to be such, a garbage mouth and things like that. Bill Hader, he was a very successful follow up to Harry Anderson, but honestly, it's like I still think that Harry Anderson gave a great performance. May he rest in peace. Same thing with John Ritter, rest in peace. Jessica Chastain, she does a great job as Bev. I think she was perfect. She really was a good choice for that role. But I still think that, personally, I think Annette O'Toole, she did a fine job in the original as well. James McAvoy, I really think he did a good job. I really do. Going back to Bill Hader for a second, I will say, I gotta be honest, I was really kind of surprised about Hader. He does a really good job. And even though he's kind of more set up to be the comedy relief and thing in this movie, but at the same time, he does have some dramatic moments, and he really plays it well. I got to give him that. There are some things some revelations about his character and things like that, but he does handle the dramatic stuff pretty decently, I would say. Let's see here. The actor who played Mike, I think he did a fine job, but same thing. I think Tim Reed in the original miniseries, I think, that's kind of the thing. So I think for the most part, the adult actors did okay. I still, prefer a couple of the performances from the miniseries over this, though, but that's just me. So yeah, I mean, the only problem is the actor who plays Stan. Now, the young actors who played Stan in both the original miniseries and this, they both do a good job. But unfortunately, when you get to the adult section, Stan doesn't really have a lot. And unfortunately, Stan has even less to do in this version than he does in the original. Stan was a little bit more of a presence in this one than he was in this one. But the child actors do fine. In the original miniseries, I think, Richard Masur, he did a great job. He was fine for what little he had to work with. But, this year is kind of the same thing. Just the actor just didn't really have much to go on. But, so, and like I said, okay, now, in terms of Pennywise, now, I do like Bill Skarsgård, but I gotta be honest, this is just me personally. Honestly, I much prefer Tim Curry. I'm sorry, I know to some people that's blasphemy. The thing is when they made the original miniseries of It, you could tell that, Tim Curry, when he had humor in the character, it was intentional, because you could tell that when they did the original miniseries that, they were still kind of going by 1980s horror rules, which is when you make a horror movie that deals with kind of absurd subject matter, you need to put funny or ridiculous elements into it. Otherwise, the audience is going to laugh at the movie itself. And they do the same thing in this one, but in this movie, they go too far with it. But I do like Pennywise, or I do prefer Tim Curry's performance a little bit more than Bill Skarsgård's. But I don't mind Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. He does a good job. It's just the only problem is like I said, you could tell that, that some of the humor that Tim Curry injected into his performance was intentional. Whereas with Skarsgård, you could tell that he's trying to play it super, super seriously. And the problem is when he's doing that, parts of his performance really do come off as unintentionally funny. He does come off kind of rubbery faced. I hate to say, he really does come off kind of almost like Jim Carrey playing the Grinch. I know the maniacal cinephile said pretty much the same thing, but I got to agree with him on that. He really does. There are moments he's doing these kind of rubber-faced facial expressions. It really does look like he's almost channeling Jim Carrey in The Grinch. It's almost the same thing. But, I still think he did okay. He was a worthy successor to Curry, but that's just me personally. There are certain things, though, that, they did certain scenes in, particularly, I'm talking about this one mostly, they did certain scenes in here that they did take from the original miniseries, like the scene where they go to the Chinese restaurant, they're all eating and stuff like that. And then, the scene with the fortune cookies, if you saw this, you know what I'm talking about. Same thing here. I would say that kind of works a little bit better in this version, because that they use practical effects, where this here is kind of wonky CGI. Um, they do other scenes too, where I don't want to give away too much, but just I think you could kind of tell where I'm going with this. Just certain scenes that were mirrored from the original miniseries, they redo again. Sure, a couple of elements have changed, but it's just it's the same scene. But just the CGI is kind of, after a while, it kind of really takes you out, or at least for me, it did. I would say the part one is definitely the stronger of the two. Like I said, part two, even though you got some really great horrific moments, the opening scene is very horrific and very unsettling and disturbing, and I give it that, and I appreciate that. The scene where Bill Denbrough, goes to the he goes to the carnival because he wants to try to save the child because he knows that Pennywise is going after it. That's a very intense, creepy scene. So, but yeah, I don't know. Just I just feel like it's kind of like little things. Yeah, I could. That's a problem. It would take me forever to go through all that stuff. But there are just certain things that I feel like these movies did better than this. But then at the same time, I feel like this miniseries did things better than this. So it's just, I don't know. It's just me personally, but I do like that they kept, that they added elements from the book that they didn't add into this. So I do appreciate that. I like that idea. They did change up a couple of things, especially like in It Chapter 2, they changed up the whole thing. What happens with Mike Hanlon? Well, in It Chapter 1, Mike Hanlon is very much just an afterthought. I mean, he has very, very little, almost nothing to do with the story until he comes in way late. But in It Chapter 2, he's more of a presence and things like that. And then in this version, if you've seen this version, one little thing I kind of give away is that in this version, Mike, he gets stabbed and he's taken to the hospital, which that's what happened to him in the book. But in this, he does get attacked by Henry Bowers, but he doesn't get stabbed, and he goes down to help them defeat it, which, I like that idea. It's a nice idea. But at the same time, though, too, you end up, by doing that, you leave out this really wonderful, very intense, suspenseful scene that was in the book that dealt with Mike's character in the book, him being in the hospital and things. But, so, I mean, you kind of lose some stuff here. You got there are certain elements from the book that I'm glad that they did not put into these movies. Obviously, the child orgy scene. Anybody who's read the book or heard about it, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, nobody really needed to see that. Another thing that, yeah, it kind of bothered me that in the original miniseries they had the character of Audra, who was Bill's wife. Was played, wonderfully played by Olivia Hussey. She, goes to Derry to try to find Bill because she loves him and she wants to work on their marriage and everything else. Where in this one, you kind of get the feeling that Audra and Bill just really they just don't seem to have much of a connection. So I kind of like the relationship between Bill and Audra in this version a little bit more than this version. Let's see. They kind of changed some things up, as far as the characters go, little things, didn't bother me that much. Like for instance, well, no, I better not say because, it's like, that's kind of the thing. Yeah, I want to let you have some surprises, also too, one thing that surprised me is like, I'm going to give away a little something, but one thing that surprised me is, Stephen King's cameo. It's hard to believe. It's like, I didn't know. Not until right before I watched this, I found out, hey, do you know Stephen King has a cameo in here? It's like, I did not know that. I really didn't. I didn't know. But yeah, so yeah, keep your eyes open. You'll see Stephen King in this movie too. But that's kind of it. I know, I'm so sorry. I know I'm all over the place with this. I'm just, I'm talking about basically like pretty much like a 5-hour movie here. So it's kind of hard to try to remember everything with it. But when all is said and done, I do recommend these. They are okay to watch, but at the same time, I really can't disregard this. I can't sit here and say, okay, because of these, now I could take this and just throw that away. I can't do that. These are okay, but the original miniseries is still, for my money, it still does certain things better. I do appreciate though that I really do appreciate though that these movies, they really do push in terms of violence, in terms of gore, in terms of things like that. So I mean, obviously the original TV miniseries couldn't do that because it was a 1990s TV miniseries. You couldn't show that stuff. Excuse me. Nowadays it wouldn't be a big deal, but it's like back then they couldn't show it. But at the same time though too, you kind of do, or at least for me, it kind of makes me appreciate the original miniseries a little bit more in the fact that they really had to try to be creative and try to make it work without resorting to the more violent aspects of the book. And but anyway, though, I think at the end of the day, these are solid films. They're interesting. Um, they're fun to watch. They're not bad. The actors, both the child actors and the adult actors, I think for the most part they do well. But I said the same thing about the original miniseries. I would just say though, for that's kind of the biggest thing that just kind of irks me is, as somebody who's actually read the book, I just feel like I would really, really wish instead of just going for two theatrical movies, even though I know I've heard that, that there's talk about now there's going to be like a chapter 3 that might include more stuff from the books and everything. We'll see what happens with that. Um, but at the end of the day, I kind of really wish that they would do with it what they had done with like Mr. Mercedes or some of Stephen King's other books, which is to do it as a limited series, to do it, like I said, maybe like a 10 episode, hour long each, series, or 12, hour long episodes or something like that. And basically, I don't mind if you add some, some different little things in here, but, keep it close to the book and things like that. But yeah, I mean these are not bad. I just like I said, I think that's just it. I still feel a little unfulfilled. I feel like, still didn't really get, the adaptation I really wanted, but still it's not bad. But then again, neither is the original miniseries. So and like I said though, just kind of like I really could have done without the all the comedy and stuff. And I know uh, it's like I'm sorry, but so I'm sitting here thinking about like the like reference to John Carpenter's The Thing. That to me was that made my eyes just roll. I was like, oh God, really? But anyway, so that's about it. Yeah, I'm a little like I said, I just really wish it could have been a little bit more. But anyway, though, I don't hate them. I still think that they're entertaining enough. I think that yeah, they're decent films, and I appreciate them for what they are. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. So again, I'm sorry. I know I'm all over the place with this, but anyway, if anybody took the time to watch all this, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I also hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Body Bags channel. There's a different video every day of the week. I'm the Saturday reviewer. We got 7 guys. We're all doing great stuff here, and yeah, we got theme weeks. We got a theme week coming up, so get ready for that. And anyway, so take care and have a good night. I'll see you later.